Hey there, everyone. My name is Ryan Schul. Welcome to my channel. In the narrative today, I want to look at pump and dumps and create a scanner that can help us understand if stock price goes beyond a certain threshold, up and down, is this considered a pump and dump kind of scheme? Okay, so we're going to look at a bunch of stocks. We're going to set some thresholds and do the analysis. It's going to be a lot of fun. So let's jump into it. Basically, we're going to pull historical stock price information from Yahoo Finance. We're going to engineer some features, looking at multi-day returns, volume spikes, 20-day moving averages. Penny stock filters are optional. Now, I'm not really looking at penny stocks. These are more like Dow 30 tickers, so we're not really going to see any pump and dump, like true pump and dump scenarios here, but you'll see how the actions work, and you'll see hypothetically how it works if you want to go ahead and put in your own penny stock symbols over here. Right, you can substitute any kind of stock ticker you want as long as it's covered by Yahoo Finance. I don't know what their actual coverage is. It's pretty high. I think like 50,000 stocks or something. Let me see what they have here. I think 50,000, give or take. Um, Oh, 12,000. Okay. Anyways, it's pretty extensive. If you want to pick any of those 12,000 stocks, that's a lot, guys. If you look at the Russell 2000, the S&P 500, they cover all those and quite a bit more. So I think you could find what you're looking for there. Now, again, this is not really like a penny stock. None of these tickers are penny stocks, right? But you can go ahead and substitute your own if you want. I'm just illustrating the point of how this can be done. Okay. So again, we're going to look ahead n number of days. We're going to define what the n is and see if there's a pump and dump activity. And then we're going to score all these events and list candidates and then plot a chart at the end. I always say that picture is worth 1,000 words. If you look at the picture, it's easier to understand what's happening than somebody trying to explain what's happening and you give them 1,000 words to do that. Probably looking at the picture is easier. So I like creating charts and graphs at the end of the analysis just to show what's going on here. So we have Yahoo Finance. We're going to pull the data from there. These are the tickers. The start date is 2020-0101, so the beginning of 2020, right? So we have a couple different criteria that we're defining here. Pump window is the days over which we measure a dump. So this is going to be 3 days, okay? And these are all variable, so you can define this to be whatever you want. This can be 5 days. This can be 3 days. This can be 4 days. This can be 10 days, right? These are all variables. You define what these are. Pump return percent, 40%. So I'm trying to make this pretty realistic. I think 40% is good. If you want more, again, it's a variable. You can change it. If you want it to be 50%, that's fine too. Now, the look back period, again, this is a variable. Compare volume to the 20-day moving average. I'm saying 20. I think that's realistic. Volume multiple 4 times over the 20-day average volume. I think that's in check with reality. Look ahead days. This is the next 7 days on the calendar. Dump drop percent is 30, right? So if it goes up 4 times or the pump percent is 40, and then the drop is 30%, we're defining that as a pump and dump, okay? So the minimum price is 50 cents. Anything less than that is kind of noisy. It's kind of choppy. It's not going to add anything to the analysis. It's probably just going to be confusing. The cooldown days is 14. So 14 days, this is 2 weeks. I think this is pretty realistic. So I'm going to go ahead and pull down the data. We just fetch it from Yahoo Finance. We get open, high, low, close volume, and of course, all the dates when all of these stocks were traded. So let me go ahead and fetch the data. So for, what do we have here? 6 stocks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 stocks going back almost 5 years. Right now it is August 21st, 2025. So we're going back almost 5 years. No, more than 5 years. Almost 6 years. So going back almost 6 years, we get 9,891 rows and 7 columns. Here's the columns right here. All right, so we start with Apple, we end with Tesla, and we start with Apple over here and end with Tesla. So we have whatever number of days that is. It's usually 252 times the number of years, so 1,000-ish. 250, maybe 1,200, 1,300. records per stock equals 252 times, we do 5.75 years. So about 1449, almost 1500 rows per stock, right? Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So let's set up some of the feature engineering criteria right here. So we're going to do a return of 3 days, a volume moving average of 20 days, and a volume ratio, which is the volume divided by the volume moving average. So we have the close right here, the pump return window. Remember, this is the percent change. If I do Control F, you can see where that comes from. 5 days, days over which we measure the jump. And the look back, this is a variable that we'd find at the beginning. If I put that into my Control F, Control V, Control C, volume look back is 20 days. Okay, so hopefully it starts to make sense. Hopefully you can see how we set the criteria at the beginning. Then we're implementing that and baking everything into the analysis here. Okay, so we have the pump return percent. So if we Control F that, go back here, pump return percent, we said was 40. Right, and the volume multiplier, I think that was 4. Control F, Control V, that was 4.0. Okay, so we're looking good. So you can see how we're starting to create criteria. Feature engineering is how you create new features from existing features. Okay, so we had the original data frame that looks like this. Now we have some new features appended into the data frame. We have the 3-day return, volume moving average over 20 days, the volume ratio, which comes from right here. Volume ratio is the volume divided by the volume moving average, and pump and event. So pump comes from here. If you look at pump, we have the 3-day return. If that's greater than the pump return percent, and it's greater than the greater volume, sorry, if the 3-day return is greater than the pump return percent and the volume ratio is greater than the volume multiple, this is going to be considered a pump event. So, or just pump, because the next criteria here is event. That gets confusing. This is considered a pump, and the event comes from down here. The event is set to false, but it's going to be sent to true if chosen is true too here, okay? Control F, Control C, Control V. So chosen comes from here, the last day. This is just a convention. This was kind of going back like 100 years, 120 years. That's just like a convention. Really, computer timing started in 1970s, I think January 1st, 1970 or something like that. For IM pump index, if GR at IT, AT, and if date greater than cooldown days. So cooldown days comes from here. Cooldown days we set was 14, right? So 14 calendar days to avoid flagging overlapping events in the same ticker. Then this can be an actual event. So let me hit Control Enter to run it. Okay, just to update that. So we saw the logic, we saw the updates. So now this is what our data frame looks like. This is the head. This is by default the first 5 records. This is the last 5 records. So we're doing good. We're halfway through here. Event dumps within look ahead days. So now we have to look at all the events, right? So for all the rows and all the events come from here. Okay, so events is basically a copy of the data frame of event. So we're taking a subset of the data frame. The data frame event is one column, and we're taking subsets. So we have to use data frame twice. We get the events. So for all the events, we are looking at the look ahead days, okay? So that comes from one of the criteria that we set at the beginning. Remember that. So look ahead days was set to 7. We're looking at the next 7 calendar days. Okay, and then we're looking at the future mask future. So we're taking a subset of that, copying that to get the future, and sending the index peak, the price peak, and the days peak as the close and the date of the activity. Okay, so if anything shows up greater than the D peak, that gets appended to here, future after peak. The price through, so PX through is a closing price, and the D through is the days through based on the date. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff. I know I had to do a little research. I looked at this a long time ago, so I kind of know how it works, but I had to do some research to to brush up on this. The dump drop percent comes from one of the criteria we set at the beginning. This is 30%. Remember, we said volume multiple is 4 times. The pump activity would be 40% up, and the dump would be 30% down. Okay, so if those are triggered, then a dump is confirmed. Okay, so if the drop is bigger than at 30%, a dump is confirmed, and we're going to score all these. So we're assigning basically a ranking, sort of system, a ranking number. It's just a number basically to define whether or not these are actual pump and dump activities, or if it just looks kind of close, or if it's not even close at all. Okay, so we're taking the pump return percent, taking the max of these basically just in case there was accidentally a 0 entered somehow. It's kind of like just a way of handling errors gracefully. You can't divide by 0. That's mathematically impossible. So I wouldn't expect that, but when you're doing these things, you have to be kind of careful. I've seen weird things before. So this just helps us prevent any zeros from throwing an error, and then the whole thing just shuts down. So we're looking at the 3-day return, the volume ratio, and the dump percent, and assigning weights. So here's 4% weight, 40%. This is 30%. This is 30%. They add up to 1%. And basically, these are just weights that help us to tune to get the score. Once we get everything, we are going to append this to a list called records. Records comes over here. You can tell it's a list because it's a square bracket. We're going to take all of these tickers, event dates, everything in this data frame right here: price at event, 3-day return, volume ratio, peak day, through date, through price, drop after peak, dump confirmed, and suspicious score. Take all that and append it into a list, convert the list to a data frame, and then sort the data frame. We're sorting all the values based on dump confirmed and suspicion score, false and false. So ascending equals false is the same as descending. And I don't even think they have a descending in Python. I think they only have ascending. So if ascending is true, you'll get true. If it's false, then it's descending. Okay, so that's how that works. I can set this to true and run it, control enter. So suspicion score, these are going to be pretty low, 0.892. These are low, right? If I flip that to false, we'll see more suspicious activity. Okay, so we'll see higher numbers, 1.958. These are high, pretty high numbers, right? And this is, again, based on the score. This comes from the 3-day return, the volume ratio, and the dump drop percent, right? So you can see what the event was, the price at the event, the 3-day return, volume ratio, price peak, price trough, right? So that's a pretty big move from 0.9 to 0.6. That's almost 30% drop. Oh, 0.31, I guess that's what that is. And then dump confirmed true, and is this suspicious or not? Anything greater than 2 would be very suspicious. This is close, but I don't think this is a real pump and dump. Again, we're looking at S&P, we're looking at Dow 30 components, and it would take a lot of money to pump and dump Dow 30, because you're talking about stocks that trade at hundreds of dollars per share, a couple hundred, sometimes several $100s per share, right? Like, to be able to move the market like that, to be able to move the market 30 and 40% is very unlikely. But probably what this is, and here's in my notes, you can see down here, anything less than 8 is really nothing. That's a non-issue. Anything between 8 and 1.2, or 0.8 and 1.2 is medium. Anything greater than 1.2 is beyond the threshold. Okay, we can keep an eye on that. Anything strong will be greater than 2.0. We didn't see anything greater than 2.0. And again, real pump and dumps will be more like penny stocks, not really Dow 30 components. So I don't know any penny stocks offhand. I would have to Google it. I just set this up just to test the logic, and I think everything works totally fine. If you state this thing and refresh it, I'm losing my view here. Right. If you want to go search for some penny stocks and pump those in here, no pun intended, if you want to pump it in here, by all means, go for it, and you can run the analysis. I don't know of any, and I didn't look for any offhand, but that might be worthwhile. So anything that looks like a big spike over here, 1.98, 1.8, 1.7, probably these spikes are totally legit. Some kind of event happened, earnings came out, and there was a big move. Uh, some miss earnings numbers, right? There's earnings gap, guidance shock news, some shock to the system, some squeeze index floats or sector moves that can move these prices pretty significantly. But are these really pump and dumps on Dow 30 components? Probably not, guys. But again, if you want to go ahead and look for some penny stocks and retest this, I think it'll be a worthwhile exercise. So the last thing, like I promised, I created a chart down here just to illustrate what is happening. Charts are always great to go ahead and visualize the final results. I always like to use Plotly charts because they're very interactive. You can mouse over the chart and the tooltip pops up. It's called the tooltip, and it's pretty cool, right? Because it gives you all the details of the chart. So you can see the ups and downs here. This is called a candlestick chart. Anything that's green is going to be an up. Anything that's down is going to be red, right? So green is good, red is bad. And I like these because they're very interactive. You can move this left and right and zoom into the area. Whoops, I did too much there. Zoom into the area of interest. All right, so if I want to look at just the pump event right here, not really a pump by definition, but here's the events, right? And here's the trough. So this is the sort of like the upkick. This is what triggered the event. And this is Mara around 2020, 05, 08. And if we look at that, I think that was the first one we saw, right? Mara 2025, 08. And what was the event? 0.9, right? And then 0.62. So here it is. Here's the 0.9. That was the high of 0.9. And then 0.62 is right down here. Okay, so that's that. The next one we see here is AMC. And if I slide my control over, we can get the details here. So the event apparently occurred. Oops, trying to zoom in on there. The event kind of occurred like over here. So 0.42, 0.44 was a close. Open was 0.47. So let me go over here and just see what this is saying. So 42, yep, 44 was the price of event, and then it went to price trough 86. So 44 to 86. That's a big move, actually. Let me see here. $42 and then 86.3, right? That would be the low. That's the trough. So the peak would be 203. That's the open, and the trough is 86.3. And over here, we're looking at 44.2. 44.2, 86.3. Let's look at one more. So I see 5.19 at 4.4 for AMC, 5.19. So that stock kind of tanked then from 2021 to 2024. Wow, I'm glad I'm not in that one. So 519 to 44, that would be the third one here. 519 to 44, and if we zoom in, we should see exactly that. 519, that was a close, and 4.4 was a close for the trough. So hopefully you see how that works, right? And I've got all the charts printed out over here for all the events, right? And if you want to condense that, if it's getting too big, you just click on that bar and everything shrinks down, right? And then you would just have to scroll down in this window. So that's it in a nutshell, guys. We start with the defaults, then we can tighten or loosen the thresholds, right? I showed you how to change all those variables. You change that to be whatever you want, and then you can flag more of these big price movements or less, right? Like maybe 40% move up and 30% down is not such a big deal, right? Maybe you have to have like 50% down, 60% down. That certainly sounds suspicious right there, right? That sounds like a pumping up. So maybe, because we did get quite a few hits in the results over here, right? That's why this chart is so big. Maybe if we actually change these thresholds over here to be more like 0.5 up and 0.6 down, then we probably wouldn't get so many events. Might not get any actually, because I'm expecting to see too many. If that's at this level of Dow 30 stocks, but who knows? So let's see. There's actually a couple. Okay, so this is saying close 0.09 and 0.62. Wait, did that even refresh? Wait a second. 0.09, 0.62. Oh, yeah. So that reset the suspicion score. So now those are wider apart. So it went from like 1.98 or whatever it was. It was high nines, 1.9 to 1.62. So a lot less suspicious, but it's still showing up in our chart as a big move, right? So the price event was 0.9 and then it moved down to 0.62. So that's why that shows up, right? But now the suspicion score is a lot lower. If I tighten those up a little bit and made this like 0.3 and then 0.2 or something, I think we would have more suspicious activities because now we have a much tighter threshold. So I ran that, and ran that. And let's see what we have. So now we have a first suspicion over 2.1, right? Because the threshold margins there are compressed right now. So this looks more suspicious. So it really depends how you define these things, right? And some of these things are somewhat arbitrary. I don't think there's any rule out there on Wall Street or anywhere that says that, the stock goes up 20% and down 20%, and that's a pump and up. Like you have to kind of like dial into it and trial and error and kind of back into the space, right, to figure out how these things are going to go. So we started with the defaults, tightened, loosened the thresholds and the constraints, and that's all fungible and changeable. You can do whatever you want with those things, right? And we know that penny stocks are thinly traded and the names will trigger more events, right? So this is kind of like a pump and dump. I'm just trying to illustrate the concept here. I don't think it's any actual pump and dumps. I don't think anything is legitimately a pump and dump here, but anyways, that's the math, that's the statistics, and that's the logic of how it works. For intraday scans, you can look at shorter frequencies. We're looking at end of day only, but you can collect intraday data and do the same type of analysis if that's your goal, if that's what you want to do. So that's it, guys. I'm going to wrap it up here. I will share the code with you, okay, and I'll post that a little bit later today when I post the video. I'll throw that up on YouTube later today. I've got a couple things to do before. I'll do that shortly. And that's it, guys. I'll hand over all the code and you can play around with it. Do whatever you want, make those changes I recommended, and see what the outcome is, okay? So I'm going to wrap it up here. Thanks for your time. Thanks for sticking with it to the end, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.